And can you all see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Again, this is a document that I brought together based on the information that I came across on the tax layer presentation. So I'm going to review some of these items. And again, these are only the items that I saw that are important for what the services we provide through VITA. So the first one here is talking about the recovery rebate credit. And so this is a credit that us as taxpayers, we received 2 of those in year 2020. And we received 1 of those in year 2021. And so this is just mentioning how that third stimulus payment that we're going to have to deal with in tax year 2021. And it just gives you some information in regards to the maximum on the income for each of the different filing statuses. And then it tells us a little bit more about the recovery rebate that we received again sometime in April. Advance payments were sent last April based on the last process return received by the IRS. So either they use the 2020 or the 2019, the latest that they had received from the taxpayer. Everyone that was noted in the tax return, $1,400 were received for each eligible member of the tax family that appeared in the tax return. So this was a pretty straightforward amount, $1,400 for everyone that appeared in the tax return. Unlike earlier stimulus payments, no age limit on the dependents, or there were different amounts. So again, the third one is a little bit more straightforward as far as the amount is concerned. This information that's noted here, we pulled it up from the IRS, and here's the IRS website. And it just gives a little bit more information in regards to that third payment. The last bullet is the important one, because I think that's where a lot of the questions were coming in as far as, you know, the dependents in regards to that $1,400. So here just gives a little information regarding that specific item. Qualifying dependents expanded. Unlike the first 2 payments, the third payment was not restricted to children under 17. Eligible individuals received a payment based on all of their qualifying dependents claimed on their tax return, including older relatives like college students, adults with disabilities, parents, and grandparents. Again, it just provides a little bit more information. And again, this is where we got that information from the IRS website. And if you have any questions or anything like that, the IRS website, if you go in there and search, you're gonna find a lot of information in regards to this one, the economic impact payment. The next one, child tax credit. Well, child tax credit is seeing a lot of changes. This is one of the major changes. For tax year 2021, there are more taxpayers eligible to claim the child tax credit due to the following. Primary is the age. Children age 17 are now eligible for the child tax credit, when previously the child had to be under the age of 17. Major change. Major change. The credit is extended to residents of Puerto Rico and the US territories. Just remember that a lot of these, as we look at these, the most important piece is the information that we enter into the system, okay? Such as this one is primarily triggered by age. So the date of birth that we put in for the dependent is going to drive this. So the software will eventually take care of the result. Okay, just remember those things. The next, regarding the child tax credit for year 2021, there are more taxpayers eligible to claim the child tax credit due to the following major change. There are taxpayers no longer must have earned income or any income to qualify for the child tax credit. Major change. Next one, child tax credit 2021. The amount of the child tax credit is significantly larger than prior years. Previously, the maximum was up to 2,000, of which 1,400 was refundable. Now, the child tax credit is fully refundable. Just right there, a major change. And the amounts are 3,600 for a child under the age of 6 and 3,000 for a child that is ages 6 to 17. Again, major change. But again, this is all going to be driven by the information that we put into the software. Again, this will be affected by what we're going to see as we move along here. And that is the advance that some people might have gotten. And so this one. So just remember, now we have this one. This one is a big one. And this is the advance payments of the child tax credit. So taxpayers had an option. I believe as we gathered information from yesterday's meeting, by default, the government would be issuing these advance by default. However, as individual taxpayers, you could have opted out by going into the IRS website for the child tax portal and opting out of receiving these advances. So that means that if people did not go in to opt out, they automatically got these advance payments. And these are going to affect people's tax return. So this is a big thing to pay attention to when you're dealing with a taxpayers who have dependents and potentially got these advances. So these advances started in the middle of the year, July 15th. Okay, so here it tells you, and these payments were based on their 2020 return or on the 2019, whichever was their latest return. And they were produced monthly. So from July through December, taxpayers received these advances. The calculation was payment amounts were $300 a month for a child under the age of 6, $250 per month for children that were 6 through 17. Taxpayers could opt out, and here it tells you could have opted out through the child tax credit portal. So again, if they did not opt out, that means that they received them. So in here, I provided some information, again, from the IRS website that showed the total of 6 payments that a person would have received for the advanced child tax credit. And so the last payment would have been received December 15th. And again, the source is the IRS website. Now, there's a letter that all taxpayers who in fact received an advance should be getting. And this is a letter. And it's letter 6419. So we need this letter in order to be able to work on their tax return. So this letter is important. And yesterday's meeting, we were talking about, okay, so if someone tells us, well, I don't know if I received any. I didn't get a letter. I have no idea what you're talking about. Question number one is, and they should know this question, hopefully, they'll be honest. Question number one would be, well, did you log into the IRS website and opt out receiving these payments? And they should be able to, I mean, give you that answer straightforward. Oh no, I had no idea that I could have done this, which means they did receive them. So in yesterday's meeting, we said, okay, so what else can we, well, the other thing is most people have access to their bank account, either through this means, through a computer, whatever it is. Pull up your bank statements and see if you have a $300 plus amount coming from the US Treasury for the months of July through December. And that's going to be one of the workarounds for this. The other one is there is a portal in the IRS website that the client could go in there and check their payments. That would be option number two. But we cannot get away from this. And the one thing to explain to the taxpayer is if they're not honest with us, they're not willing to do their part in looking up the bank statement or going through the IRS portal, then the issue is going to be the delay. Because if we do this tax return showing that, oh, well, they didn't receive any, because they're saying that they didn't receive any. Well, the delay is going to be twofold. Delay number one is it's already going to be delayed only because there's dependents. Remember that the IRS delays by default any return that has dependents with any of these benefits. Okay, that's number one. Number two, if we don't enter this information correctly because they're not willing to go the extra mile on their own, and we process it, it gets rejected. Now that's the other delay. So now you've doubled up the delay only because the client is not willing to go the extra mile. And that's something that us, either as tax preparers, as coordinators, we need to explain to these clients what is going to be the further delay if they're not willing to do the work, because maybe they received the letter, they didn't realize they need to bring it with them, or they didn't receive the letter. I don't know. So those are things that at each site, you're going to have to gauge on how you're going to handle these type of situations. Because remember, all this, the advances, the economic impact payment, everything comes from the US Treasury. And the IRS is the US Treasury. We can't say no to that and it's a yes, it's a reject automatically. So those are things that really need to be explained to the client so that they understand the importance of trying to do a correct return so that we do not make it a further delay for them. And that becomes very important. So this is a letter here that will be received. The letter is in English and Spanish, as far as I could tell. So this is a letter that will be received. Down at the bottom, it does explain the repayment protection. I'm not going to go over this, but I suggest that you become familiar because there is a repayment protection. depending on the situation and how they got their advances versus how their tax return is looking at for this tax year. So again, make sure you review that. And again, my suggestion is to review information on the IRS website as well on that topic. The next one is the earned income tax credit, age requirements. Again, this one is another of those, and most of these are the same way, that is based on the information that we're entering into the system. Earned income credit, age requirements. Historically, taxpayer without a child had to be at least age 25, but under the age of 65 at the end of the tax year. That's been previous. Now the new one. The age requirements for tax year 2021 are now changed. Now the age requirement for a taxpayer with no qualifying child is as follows. 24 if the taxpayer was a student for at least 5 months of the year. 18 if they were in a foster care anytime after turning 14 or were homeless in any taxable year. The last one, big change. 19 for all other non-student taxpayers. So this is a major change right here. So that means somebody who has, let's say, finished high school, they're on their own, they're 19 years old, are not attending school, okay, they're not living with parents, they're working on their own, they don't have any kids. This is that one that we're talking about. Again, there must be earned income for this, for all of these. So that becomes important. The last one, it gets rid of, but under the age of 65 at the end of the tax year. It's no longer valid. There is no upper age limit for the credit in 2021. Again, a major change there. And again, it depends on the threshold of the earned income as well. And again, just remember that this is all triggered by the software based on the information that is entered. So again, important to enter information correctly into the system. Earned income tax credit in regards to prior year income. We had this last year as well. And this one you have to pay attention because, you know, the way that the IRS does things sometimes, you know, it doesn't make sense. Well, this is one of those. So you need to pay attention. So for 2021, taxpayers can use their 2019 earned income to calculate the earned income tax credit if their earned income in 2019 was greater than their 2021 amount. So we're talking about earned income being greater in 2019 versus 2021. Taxpayers cannot use 2020 earned income amounts to calculate the 2021 earned income tax credit. So again, pay attention to this one. If you have any clients that want to do this, the most important thing is you have to be looking at their tax return to figure this one out. And you have to be looking at their 2019, not 2020. And again, if that 2019 earned income is higher, then that's when you can go about doing this. But other than that, basically, you shouldn't. The 2019 amount must be reported on a designated line on the 2021 Form 1040. Previously, it was entered in the margin. So this is embedded in the software, and we're going to look at it to see where you find it, because it is there. Okay, it's in the software. Again, I'm just Making reiteration and notation here that, again, you're looking at 2019. If you're gonna use that one, it must be higher than the 2021 earned income. In case, because you might have some people that wanna do that. Okay, the next change, child and dependent care credit, a major change. Previously, these credits were non-refundable. Okay, non-refundable. So these are the old ones. These are the new ones. Now we're talking about refundable credits. Refundable, major change. The expense limit for one child cannot exceed 8,000. Prior, it was up to 3,000. For 2 or more children, 16,000 versus 6,000. The credit, the actual credit of what you can actually potentially get back depending on the situation, 50%. So one child, you can get up to $4,000 back. 2 or more kids, you can get up to $8,000 back. And these were your priors. Again, major change. Phase out. It would be phase out when AGI was more than 15,000. Now we're looking at 125,000. So you'll see more people qualifying for this, again, because primarily of the AGI on the phase out. So major change. Dependent care benefits. Consolidated Appropriation Act allows that any unused dependent care amounts for 2020 to be rolled over to 2021 and from 2021 to 2022. Historically, unused dependent care funds were forfeited at year end. The age limit for a child for rolled over dependent care funds is 13 in 2021 and goes up a notch, age 14 in 2022. The age limit for a child using non-rolled over funds remains at 12. And then it tells you here, further modify dependent care benefits by raising the allowed contributions amount for 2021 from 5,000 to 10,500. Charitable contributions. We had this one last year. It's been extended for year 2021 for taxpayers who use a standard deduction. So for 2021, the charitable deduction is further modified. Individuals taking the standard deduction can deduct $300 of cash contributions. Married filing jointly, taking the standard deduction, can claim $600. The deduction was moved to below the line. Lifetime learning credit. Okay, the credit amount remains at $2,000 per student. The only change here, the phase out range has been significantly increased to modified adjusted gross income of $80,001 and $90,000 for unmarried individuals. The amounts are now the same as the phase out limits for the American Opportunity Credit. So again, these changes, I brought them in from the presentation in the tax layer, and I'm going to show you that here in a few minutes where you can find that. So from here, I am going to move on to the intake sheet. I'm just going to briefly talk about the intake sheet. So this is the intake sheet. Just remember that there is an English and Spanish version. And I know that a lot of clients will fill out this in Spanish. So if you have any issues in the translation, just get the English and compare it to the Spanish, and you should be able to figure it out. So again, up at the top, we have the information that we need from the client. So besides what's here, just remember, if we're talking about that client that has dependents, and we're talking about that age range that they would have received the advanced child tax credit, now we need to think about the letter. And also the economic impact payment. So again, the information, Social Security cards for themselves and any dependents, or I-10 letters, a picture ID, and any other information that's going to affect their tax return. That becomes very important. As far as the intake sheet, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'm just going to tell you what is extremely important. Number 10, especially for that college student, can anyone claim you or your spouse as a dependent? It's important that we pay attention to this one. Okay, so it's either a yes or no or an unsure. If we're talking about a college student under the age of 24, live with the parents, has a small part-time job, this answer should be automatically a yes by default. Because the question is, can anyone claim you? Number 11, identity theft. Just remember that I know sometimes clients say, well, I haven't received the letter for this year, but I do have identity theft. Can I use the one that I received last year? No. It has to be a letter that is dated December or January, but it has to be a currently dated letter. Cannot be a previous year. And there'll be an automatic reject on the return. So that becomes very important. Email address is optional. Again, you have the filing status information. You have the people who live with them information at the bottom. You as a volunteer, you are responsible for filling out the gray part on this section. Okay. Again, as a volunteer, you are responsible to pay attention to yes, no, unsure. If we have any unsures, we need to make them a yes or a no. And we do that either by calling the client, or maybe the client is somewhere near a vicinity, or we text them, or whatever it is that we contact the client. Paying attention to the B's and the A's associated with each line item. B means if you are certified in the basic, you may do the tax return. If it's an A, that means the person needs to be certified in the advance. So paying attention to those things before you start working on the actual tax return and start to enter information in the software. So that becomes very important. Down at the very bottom, item number 10 or number 11, which is economic payment. Did you receive one? And number 11, did you receive the advanced child tax credit payments? And so you have the yes, no box. Hopefully they won't have unsures on that one, because if there are unsures, then we need to further investigate. I would suggest to investigate the no, if they put a no there, because again, we want to assure ourselves that in fact it is a no. So again, very important. And for number 11, you're looking for that letter, the 6419 letter. Number 10 is a notice, 1444, that I know I received mine sometime in May of this year. Because I did receive, my husband and I, we received our economic impact payment in April. And I do remember we received $2,800. And I do remember receiving the letter. Ask me where the letter is. I have no idea, but I know I received it. It's somewhere in my stash. But again, those are things we're going to be faced with. And again, if people don't remember, access your bank account. Access your statements, because we can all access our information for the most part online. The last part, the last section of the intake sheet is information. Some of this information will be in the software, in particular in certain sections. And number one is a new one, and it is in the software when you start entering the personal information. And that is, would you like to receive written communication from the IRS in a language other than English? And so, yes, no. And if the answer is yes, the language. So this is a question under the personal information as you start working on the tax return in TaxSlayer. Number two has been there for a while, and it is also part of setting up the personal information for the tax client. Number three is part of finishing up the tax return, the direct deposit, purchasing of savings bond, and so forth, if you want to split the money. Balance due is also in there at the very end. And then number 5 and 6 are also in there. The last items are to capture information in regarding to the tax clients. And again, you do have this information at the very end of the software. And then you can use this when you're working at your site for any additional comments, any other additional information that you want to put here. And also for the quality review, you would be using this section as well. Okay, the primary password here is all in caps. And it's the word train pro web. And again, we have a username, or I do, and the password. Okay. So this is a main page of the practice lab. So the information that I provided that was presented in a presentation by the software is right in here, down at the bottom, where it says recorded webinar 5, software enhancements. So I highly recommend that everyone spends time. I think if you do about 50 minutes to an hour, you should grab a lot of the information that you need and so forth. It goes through the changes and then it takes you through the software. Again, you have some more information here that I also recommend for you to access. Okay, so we're going to work through a scenario, and the one we're going to be working through is the last one, which is Castro. So I'm just going to do the control find and find me Castro. So this is a scenario problem here. And this scenario problem is Jeronimo and Sandra Castro. And it gives us some information. So Jeronimo is retired and Sandra is a housewife. Jeronimo is legally blind. The next bullet, I'm going to change it. I'm going to make some changes here so that we can experiment with the advanced child tax credit. And we're going to experiment with the economic impact payment. So the change that I'm going to do here is that Charlie is not 25 years old. Charlie will be 16. He will be 16 years old. And Charlie is disabled. Charlie does not provide for his support. Charlie depends on his parents for full support. So that's what I'm doing here as changes so we can experiment with what we have at hand with child tax credit. Jeronimo and Sandra both receive Social Security benefits. Jeronimo won slots in Las Vegas and he's got a W-2G. Sandra was paid $54 for jury duty. Jeronimo and Charlie are victims of identity theft. They have letters. Jeronimo and Sandra are covered for health insurance purposes through Medicare, and Charlie's covered with Medicare Parts A and B. Jeronimo and Charlie are U.S. citizens. Sandra is not a U.S. citizen, but she is a permanent resident. They all have valid Social Security cards. And they claim to have received the advanced child tax credit, but do not have the letter. Okay, so first thing I like to tackle here is the issue on Sandra not being a U.S. citizen. So we're going to access, and I'm going to be using the publication 4012 to look up some of this information. So I'm going to go to the 4012. Just remember that the 4012 is a resource guide that we are required to have along our workstation when we are doing taxes. So I'm going to be using the 4012. So the issue here is non-resident or resident. Now on the notes, it does tell us already that she is a permanent resident. So that's going to be key. So this information is found in tab L. So I'm going to use a table of contents. And I know it's in tab L. So I'm just going to scroll down. And there it is. And so we have the decision tree. Let me just do the rotate. So you have this decision tree that you may use. Okay, the decision tree, and I'm going to use the next page, is followed by this page. These two reference basically the same thing. So I'm going to use the next one. So I just wanted to show you that there is this decision tree. So I'm going to go back and I need to undo the rotate so I can get back to the next page, which is the chart. So this is figuring out whether the person is a resident or a non-resident alien. So determine a residency status for federal income tax purposes. And number one question, were you a lawful permanent resident of the United States, had a green card at any time during the year? And if you notice on the notes, they did tell us already that she was a permanent resident. So by default, number one for her is yes, meaning she will be classified as a resident alien for income tax purposes. However, if the answer to this was no, then of course we would follow through and answering the other questions to determine whether the person would be classified as a resident or non-resident in the process. So this becomes important, especially when you have those Social Security cards that have other notations in the cards because they're not U.S. citizens. And so this is where that issue comes in, that we need to pay attention and ask the questions to figure out this. Okay, so you have this one and then the decision tree, but it gets us to the same place. So I'm going to go back. And now I'm going to work with what we have at hand. So I'm going to go to the practice area and start setting up the return. So we're going to start a new return. And let me go back. So just remember, we need the social security card to enter the information, of course, of the number and eventually of the name. That's the importance, because when we're doing this and eventually the return gets e-filed, the IRS file matches with the social security, specifically on the name. So that becomes important. So we're gonna enter the number here. For the practice lab, we always use the zeros in the middle. And I'm going to switch this number slightly because I already used it yesterday. Okay, based on the information that we have at hand, Jeronimo and Sandra will be doing a married filing jointly return. If we had any situation where we had to further look into on what exactly is your filing status, we have the wizard. And also your 4012 has information on the either the charts or the decision trees to determine that as well. But there is this nice little neat wizard that you can use. So I'm going to continue. And in here, when we're entering information, it is best to use the caps. It's a lot easier, especially for whomever is going to be doing the quality review, to look at the information, and we have the information in caps. So before I start entering the name of Jeronimo Omar Lopez Castro, if you notice, we have multiple names starting with the first name, a middle initial, and then two possible last names. So for those type of situations, publication 4012, so I'm going to go back. And I'm going to go to my table of contents. And this should be in tab B. And right in here, in this area. So tab B. So again, this is where I'm at. I already entered the filing status. And then here it is. Determining last names. Again, this is important because of the match that the IRS file does with the Social Security file. So here it gives you some examples. And then it gives you some more examples here. And then it gives you more examples here. So I'm going to be using the example in here. And I will be using the example, either we can use this one or we can use this one. So Jeronimo Omar. So Jeronimo is of course the first name. Omar is the middle. And we're going to be using Lopez Castro as the last name. Now, if you were to be assisting a client, it's nice when they have their previous tax return, because if they have their previous tax return, or the other thing is if they've been to your site prior from the previous year, then the nice thing is if they of course opted in, most of them do opt in, you can bring in the information forward from the previous tax year, and that would already be there. But let's say they did not come to you last year, they went somewhere else. Well, it's nice if they bring that previous tax return, because you can look at it and see how it was entered. Again, sometimes these are hit and miss, especially for the person who's taking care of rejects. And so again, this is important right here. So I'm going to enter the first name and the O, And the last name I will enter as Lopez Castro. And I'm just gonna tab in here until they get to the date of birth. So the date of birth is in the intake sheet. And for him is February the 10th of 1944. So the other thing, especially on date of birth, is on the primary taxpayer. If you have access to their ID, you may look at it just to confirm that this is correct. Because some people might get confused, especially with a year. Occupation, he's retired. Okay, the questions here are for the primary taxpayer. So what in particular do we need to put a check mark? Because it either provides the client with an additional benefit, or the item pertains to them. What other thing do I need to check off here based on the notes that we have for the client? What other item do I need to check off?
Taxpayer is blind.
Okay.
Legally blind?
Okay, number 2, right?
Yes.
So I need to come back and make sure I assign a check mark for him. Now, as I move along here, taxpayer wishes to contribute $3. So again, this is at the very end of the intake sheet. So we scroll down. So we need to look at that answer or whatever they wrote in. If anything, it's in the last page. And there's no election here, so we leave it blank. Okay, let's see if there's anything else in here. Okay, so this is in case, when I mentioned earlier, in regards to using a person's 2019 earned income amount for the earned income credit, because maybe the 2019 is in fact higher than their 2021 earned income, then you would come in here and select this. But this is a step that more than likely would be done at the very end, after you determine and add everything for the 2021 tax year. But the designation is here. This is where you find that designation, just in case you have anyone in that situation. The last items right here, this is a question that appears in your intake. Taxpayers prefer to receive written communication from the IRS in a language other than English. So that is in the new intake form, this question. And then the other one has to do with an accessible format when communicating with the IRS. Again, 2 new questions that are in here. So there's nothing else to select. Now we enter her information. So I'm going to come back on the problem. And again, as we enter her information, we're using her Social Security card. So her name is Sandra. And when I tab, I will get his last name, but I need to make sure that I correct that, because that would be incorrect. Social Security number, as it is on the card. When she was born and based on the intake sheet. And it's 1945. occupation. Okay, so we need to look at her, if there's anything here that we need to select. So like for her, we did determine that she meets the permanent resident, which is the same as if a normal US citizen and so forth. So in case we have a taxpayer that we determine that they are in fact a non-resident alien, this is a designation right in here. Okay, so this is a designation here. And the same thing for the primary, in case there's a designation as well. So again, this is where you assign that information. Like I said, for her, we did figure out that she is a permanent resident alien. So right in here, their address. So their address is on the intake sheet. And then the phone number. On the phone number, just remember that this is a married filing jointly return. And we do want to see 2 phone numbers. We need to remind our clients that the number is not for the IRS to call them, but for whomever is doing the rejects at the site. If in case the return is rejected, someone at the site will call them. Again, that the IRS will not be calling them when we're using their number here. It's just a reminder to remind our clients, again, that the IRS will not call. IRS handles everything through the mail. So we continue. Okay, the next section is dependents, and we do have, so I'm gonna say yes. And our dependent here, so I'm gonna go back to the assignment, is Charlie Omar Castro. Again, the changes that I made here is that he is 16 years old and he's disabled, and he does not provide for himself, that the parents are providing for him. So he is a dependent. So I'm gonna come back. And again, enter his information. Middle initial. And again, changing, correcting his last name. His date of birth, what we're changing is a year. The year is 2005. So 2/28. And 2005. Again, we're making him 16. His social security number as noted. And the answer is yes. The relationship. So for the dependent, is there anything we need to assign here on the boxes?
Yes, disabled.
Okay, so disabled. Okay. I'm gonna continue. And we'll continue here. Continue. Okay, so if you notice on the left side, you have like the tree of the areas that we visited at this point. So I am in this area. So here is the IRS identity theft protection pin. And according to the notes, who are the ones that have an identity theft pin?
Oh,
Guillermo and Charlie.
Okay, so if you notice, everyone that we noted on the return appears on the list. So we only assign whoever has a letter. And again, just remember, it has to be a current letter.
Jerónimo.
And okay. So we continue. And we continue. So we notice we're moving along on the forms and on the tree here. So now we're in the section of the federal section in relation to income. So the first part is basically your most common incomes up here at the top, followed by the lesser common income at the very bottom. So now I am in the section of the forms that the problem has. So I'm going to come to the problem. And I'm just going to scroll down to get me to the forms. Okay, so the form that we have here is Social Security benefit form for Jerónimo. Just remember that this form, we do have a lot of clients that maybe this is in 2021 is the first year that they're receiving Social Security and they're not aware of the form, because that's usually what happens. To the way to describe this form is it is a pink beige fold out form. And when you tell them pink beige fold out form, they're like something's gonna click. They remember receiving the form. As I'm speaking right now, my husband received his form already. So here we are, the first week, almost first week of the year, and forms are already being sent out. So again, a reminder of the clients, they should be receiving the forms in early part of January. I know that a lot of clients either put them in file 13 or throw them away thinking, oh, I don't need it. But we do need the form. It's very important because the form has information that either needs to be separated, like in this case. And so again, the form is in fact required. If they don't have the form, visiting the IRS portal, calling the IRS. I know, most places are strained because there's not enough personnel, takes longer and so forth. So again, options for the clients, go online and request. But we do need the form. That becomes very important. So Jerónimo here received the form, and box 5 is important for Jerónimo. He also has some information on the description of box 3. That's going to be important. We will be entering the information of the Medicare Part B, the amount. It really doesn't affect the return. He does have a portion of the benefits that were received that belong to the prior year. This will be 2020, prior year. So we're going to separate the lump sum and show that in the lump sum worksheet. And so all of this is also in your 4012. So I will show you that as we move along. And here's the notations of the information that we're going to be needing when we enter the information regarding the lump sum. I'm just going to show you that right below is also the Social Security form for Sandra, and the information for Sandra is here, and she does not have any prior year benefits. So we're going to enter the information for both. And as we move along, I'm going to show you in the 4012 where you find that information. So I'm going to go back to the software. So again, right in here, distributions from pensions, annuities, retirements, IRAs, Social Security, etc. And again, in this area, the most common one is usually your 1099-R, but here's your Social Security, right in here. This area here does not, I guess, really separate the difference between the primary and the spouse. If you notice, it's one lumped form altogether. The only designation, taxpayer, Social Security benefit, taxpayers, federal tax withheld, taxpayers, Medicare premiums, spouses, Social Security benefit, spouses, federal tax withheld, spouses, Medicare premiums. And here's a lump sum. So again, everything appears in one. So we're gonna take care of Jeronimo in the process. So Jeronimo's box 5 information is 22,840.15. Federal income tax withheld, box 6. Box 6 is empty, so there's nothing there. The premiums that are noted in box 3 for Jeronimo are the 1205. So you notice we're done with him as far as this section. Now I'm gonna move on to the spouses information. So the spouses was the 7,474.23. Now, mind you, I put the cents. Eventually the system will round it up to the nearest dollar. No federal income tax withheld. The Medicare premiums for her. Okay, so I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna stop right here and I'm gonna go back to your 4012. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the table of contents. And this information is in right in here. Right in here. D46, D47 is your Social Security information. So that you can see. So this is what we just entered. So when in doubt, you have questions. This is again your source that tells you about the information and how to enter it. So we are in the lump sum information. And here's your lump sum information. Okay, for this, we do need the information from the prior year. And it was provided to us in the notes. So again, the information is there. So I'm gonna go back to the software. And so the lump sum in this case is 2020 for the prior year. Filing status, on the notes, they tell us it's the same, married filing jointly. On the notes, they provide us with the Social Security payments that were received in the earlier year. That is 14,576.56. The portion of this year's Social Security amount, Social Security received that belong to the earlier year are the 9,500. The modified adjusted gross income from the prior year was also provided on the notes. The only thing that was not provided in the notes, and this is the importance of having a prior year tax return when you're doing this information. Because the last item is related to the taxable benefits reported in the earlier year, meaning what portion of the Social Security benefits from the prior year were taxable. And we don't know the portion of that. So for this, practical purpose, I'm gonna leave it blank. But that's why we need the prior year tax return to complete this. So if you happen to have anyone that shows this information, it's best you have that prior year tax return.
Maggie, I have a question.
Yes.
Is this gonna happen to anybody, to all the people that have a SSA, or just to some people?
No, just some. I rarely see this issue.
Okay. Oh, this is just in case we come across this.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Normally it's just the front page. Let me just show you the front page again. Normally it's just, oops, not that. Where's my front page? Oh, let's continue.
Okay.
This one.
Okay.
This is normally the one you complete.
Okay.
Because normally the Social Security looks like more like hers.
Oh, okay.
This is normally what you see.
Okay. Only if you see a prior year, that's when we need to go and do this process?
Yes. Now, the only reason that you probably have something like this, or that the client would have something like this on their Social Security, it usually deals with a lapse of payments, because maybe somebody started the process kind of late,
Okay.
and the Social Security took longer than anticipated to start providing the benefits. And so even though they did the whole process the prior year, and they were entitled to those benefits the prior year, but didn't start receiving them until current year, that's when you have those.
Okay.
They were actually for the prior year, but they started to receive them current year.
In the current year. Okay.
And like I said, those are rare situations, but you might come across them.
Okay. And do we ask them about this, or they are gonna let us know, or does the form let us know?
No, you would see it on the form.
I would see it on the form?
Yes, it would be
Okay.
on the form. Mhm.
And where in the form? So like that, if I see it, where is it?
It's right here. It would be right here like it is on his. It would be in
Let me
here.
see. Oh, I see benefits for, okay, so when we see
It would be in
benefits for
here.
a prior year, then this is what we have to do.
Right. So
Got
you
it. Okay. I
You would
was,
see that.
okay.
You would see that. But like I said, normally what you see is this. Very
Okay.
simple. That's the
Got
norm.
it. Mhm.
Once in a blue moon, you'll have that.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, so I'm gonna continue here. Okay, so I'm gonna look at the information that's here for them. And since we're still here in the area of pensions, 1099-R, just gonna go back to the assignment. And so we have this one, so we're gonna take care of this one here in a few minutes. But I'm gonna take care of this one, which is your 1099-R distribution for his retirement system. So I'm gonna take care of this one because this one is within the same section. Okay, so before I start doing that, let me go back and don't remember, this is further down. Let me go back to the table of contents, makes it easier. It's right in here. 1099-R, right in here. So the 1099-R. So again, in your 4012, this is what we're going to be entering on your 1099-R. So I'm going to come back and start entering. And the 1099-R belongs to Jeronimo. So the designation here, since this is a married filing joint return, we need to designate whomever received the form. Payer identification number. As the same thing with a W-2, unfortunately, this assignment does not have a W-2, but in the forms, very similar to a W-2, you have a payer's identification number, which is this one. I know in your W-2, there's the numbers up at the top, usually mixed in with the recipient's either social security number or other numbers that sometimes volunteers mistake for the payer's identification number. So making sure that we're picking up the payer's identification number. Otherwise, if we pick up the incorrect number and the quality reviewer does not pick it up, it'll be an automatic reject. So again, entering the number. And somewhere along this was entered incorrectly, so we just need to correct it. Since this belongs to the Texas Municipal Retirement System. And the address is a P.O. Box. P.O. Box. And it's in Austin, Texas. Okay, so I'm going to go up. So on your form, very important to make sure that we understand is when we're looking at the form, and I'm going to go back to the form so we can look at it. Okay, so right in here, box 1, gross distribution, box 2, 2A, taxable amount. If box 1 and box 2 are populated with the exact amount, that means that someone in the basic level may complete the return. The other common scenario is box 1 is populated, but box 2 is not, meaning the taxable amount has not been determined. So if this is blank, then a person at the advance is the only one that can complete the return. So a basic level person may not complete the return. So again, paying attention to box 1 and box 2. That becomes important. So you notice in this case, box 1 and box 2 are populated with the exact amount. And if they are populated like this, it's usually that case, that's the way they are populated. Okay, and then again, the other thing is paying attention to the form and entering the information as it appears on the form. Again, going back to your 4012, okay, in here, it again tells you everything regarding the completion of the form. So I'm going to go back and complete the form. So box 1, 25, 450.22. Again, I enter cents. I let the system do the rounding up. So I'm going to tab. Okay, none of these are populated. There's nothing there until we get to number 4. So number 4, they did have some federal income tax withheld. And number 5, employee contribution is populated. So we enter as is. Distribution codes, very important. Let me go back to your 4012. Want to get to my distribution codes. They're somewhere in here. Right in here. That box 7, distribution codes. So the one we have here is number 7. Number 7 is considered a normal distribution, meaning normal distribution, the client is at retirement age and he's receiving normal distributions. Okay, that's okay. I know that last year, and I'm assuming this year, we might have the same situation. We might have tax clients that have withdrawn money from their retirement and they're not at retirement age. You might have a number 1 in there. And this is where it requires a little bit more of inquiring, asking questions with a client. Because if it has to do with a COVID-19 related and it's considered a disaster, then possibly they could get an exemption for that 10% additional tax that a person gets assessed for early withdrawal from their retirement account. And so that's something that we need to further investigate. So again, making sure that we understand that we might see number 1s, and you might see your number 2s depending on the situation. Those are the most common ones. If you scroll down, making sure that you pay attention on the list, there are some codes that are labeled out of scope, depending on the situation. So again, familiarize yourself with the codes that are associated with the 1099-R. So I'm going to go back and enter a 7. And again, paying attention to the form if there's anything else that we need to populate. And that's it for the form here. So I'm going to continue.
Maggie, I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Looking at the that form that we were just doing for Jeronimo, it's got a Y Castro. Does that need to be changed or for the name?
I don't think, let me go back.
It's on the form.
No, you would not change it because there's no option here to change it. If you
Okay,
notice,
so we just put it like just Jeronimo.
right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. But his name doesn't have a Y. Is there going to be an issue with that later?
No, because it's driven by his initial information that we entered on the personal information.
Okay, got it.
And of course, the most important here would be his social security number.
Mm-hmm.
That in fact, the form has the correct number, or that
Okay.
he's got the information that shows it's the correct number. Because
Okay.
nowadays, most of these forms have only like the last 4 digits.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
If the last 4 digits are correct, then it's the same corresponding a person.
Okay.
Now, if you
Okay.
notice, I'm sorry, what was that?
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, okay, thank you.
Okay, so if you notice, I continued on that 1099-R. And so this is what I was referring to earlier. That if in case, you know, after further talking to the client, you determine, let's say someone is, 40 years old and they're already removed money from their retirement and they had a distribution code of 1. And so this is the area where you would assign and asking them, of course, why did you remove money? I mean, you do have to say, why was it that you removed money from your retirement account? You know, they would have to explain to you the situation so that you can determine if they fall under an exemption. And again, right now, of course, the major one is the COVID related exemption. If that's the case, you would go through the process And then let me just show you here. I'm gonna say yes. And I'm gonna continue. So it's gonna ask you the questions, and you would, you would say what it is, okay? And you would enter the amount that you're trying to not include as a taxable portion, which would be whatever appears on your 1099-R, so that they cannot be charged or assessed the 10%. So again, this is the area that you would complete. So I'm going to go back. I'm just showing you the area. And I'm gonna say no, because we know that he is in full retirement age, and that's why he got a distribution. So if you notice, based on the information that we entered in regards to his 1099-R, we've already then established some information here. So I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna continue here. And I'm gonna continue here. Now I'm gonna go back to his information, to the assignment here, and I bypassed this one, this form. So I'm gonna go find where I'm gonna enter the information for the gambling winnings. So I'm gonna go back to the site. And before I go there, I need to remember to go visit my 4012. And so that we can see the information. So I'm gonna come back to my table of contents. And this area is going to be in less common income, the gambling, and there it is. And right in here, gambling winnings. So I'm gonna come back. And less common income, right at the bottom, gambling winnings. W2G. And the form is for Jeronimo. So we assign him the form. The payer's identification number. Again, if you look at the form, payer's identification number. I'm just gonna enter the other numbers here. So I am entering 107 74 2021. So once you use a payer's identification number, by default, you should get the information already entered. In this case, Las Vegas Casino and their address. Now the gross winnings. So the gross winnings for them was 1340. Gambling losses, we do not include. You could include them, but it's not gonna, nothing's gonna happen. Losses, gambling losses only come into play when a person itemizes. And when someone itemizes, you can only show your gambling losses up to your winnings. So therefore, we bypass the gambling losses. Federal income tax. I don't see any. Box number 4. Type of wager is slots. when it was won, it's on the form. So it was won on July 18th. Of course, it has to be from the prior year, 2021. Everything else is left blank. And we continue. So this should change slightly. Well, it didn't have any effect. Except for the AGI, it did go up. Okay. Going back to the assignment. So Sandra did have jury duty payment of $54. So again, in the 4012, this is one that you, in case you have any jury duty pay, it tells you here for other income, that's where it's going to be reported. It tells you that this is not considered earned income for the earned income credit. So it does have a box there that we leave blank when you set it up. So I'm going to go back to the software. And there it is. It's still under less common income, other income not reported elsewhere. So this would be for Sandra. And there's your jury duty pay. And it was $54. So you notice underneath, you would have a designation, but in this case, we do not designate this as earned income because it's not considered earned income. So we continue. So again, our AGI went up, but again, federal income tax is still the same. Okay, so as far as sources of income, I think we're done. So as we move along, so I'm gonna continue here. So if you notice, you have on the left side, the areas that we populated. And so now we're gonna continue. And so we continue. And we're gonna continue here. There's nothing else. Same thing here, we're gonna continue. We're gonna continue here. And the same thing here. And right in here. This is gonna be the fun part. So this is the area, two different areas. The top one and the second one are the ones that are of concern. So we're gonna tackle the first one, the recovery rebate credit. So it says here, recovery rebate credit for individuals who qualified for the third stimulus payment, but did not receive one or received the wrong amount. So recovery rebate credit. So it would be populated if they did not receive one. So we're gonna go in there, and if you notice, right now we haven't done anything with this section because this area would only be populated if they didn't receive one or they received the wrong amount. So that's the reason we're getting 889 for now. I'm gonna go in there and just change it to show we didn't receive one. Okay. And so here we're gonna say, no, we did not receive any. So we'll see what happens when we do that. So right now, we're at 889. And now we're showing that no on the economic payment. Let's see what happens. And we continue. And so we see what happens. How our refund has gone up, but just stating that no, they have not received one. So I'm gonna come back and just see what the system did. Should be a difference of 4,200, and it is 4,200 because the system is now given 1,400 times 3, 4,200. So this is where, again, this is going to be the importance of, did they receive a recovery rebate credit? And we're talking about the third one. People are confused. So we're talking about number 3, the one received in April of 2021 or thereafter. So by default, for everyone that appeared in their tax return for either 2020 or 2019, whichever was the latest, everyone received $1,400. So that's the reason here it's given $1,400 times 3. So that's the difference right there. Now let me go back. And I'm just gonna say, yes, we received it. Okay, because now I want to switch it to, yes, they did receive it. So I'm gonna put 4,200. So now I'm back to the 889. Now I'm going to deal with the advance child tax credit. And in the assignment, it said that they're stating that they did receive the advance child tax credit payment, but they do not have a letter. So we're going to take their word, and we would visit with them and maybe be able to pull their bank statements, or they're aware of how much they received. So if you remember, Charlie was 16. So I'm gonna go back to where I have that information, because I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm gonna come back to my information here that I had in regards to advances. Okay, so remember, Charlie is 16. So that means they would have received 250 for the 6 payments. So we're gonna show that on the return. So we're gonna say yes, they did receive. And we determine that they got 250 times 6. So they received a total of $1,500. So $1,500. And it would be for one child. And we're gonna say, and of course, we need to answer this question. Did you or and your spouse have a principal place of living, Adobe, in the United States for more than half of 2021? The answer has to be yes. So otherwise, if it's no, then, it's a disqualifier. So save. So when we answer that question, you should see how the refund amount has changed. Because now it's allowing for the amount that they did not receive in full, because they are entitled to $3,000, of which they received half, $1,500. And so that's what it's calculated. And we'll see that as we move along and finish the return and look at the forms. But that is what has happened. So I'm going to leave it as is. I'm going to again show that they in fact received the advanced child tax credit. They received $250 for 6 months, an amount of $1,500, and showing that they did in fact receive the recovery rebate credit. So I'm going to continue here. They do not have insurance through the marketplace. And I'm going to continue. And we're going to continue here. So for those of you that have done taxes before, we can see some changes here as we look at the forms. There is now additional forms because of the detail that's being provided and because of the changes. And so you have, now we have, I believe it's 4 more items that are here. It is, and the information that's been calculated. I'm going to click on the second page for the 1040. So for this particular assignment, they did have a total tax of $266. $889 was the federal income tax that was withheld under 1099-R. And here's the other half. Remember that because he is 16, the child tax credit is $3,000. However, in the advance, they receive half of it. Here's the other half, the $1,500. So the $1,500 plus the $889 less the tax of $266 arrives to a total refund of $2,123. So this is how eventually very similar to what you will see in the live account. So again, paying attention that one of the important pieces is both the advanced child tax credit information and the economic recovery payment. This tax return did not have earned income credit because in essence, their sources of income are not considered earned income. So if you notice, they did not have W-2 income. And I'm going to go back so that we can see this on your 4012 table of contents and visiting the earned income credit right in here. So the first item is showing what qualifies as earned income for the earned income credit. So you notice the normal stuff is taxable wages, your W-2s, salaries, and all these items here. Their sources of income were Social Security, pension, and they had the slot machines, and they had jury duty. none of which is considered earned income for the earned income credit. So that's a reason when looking at this, there is no earned income credit. Otherwise, the refund amount could have been more. Any questions?
No, Miss Oli.
No questions, all good.
Sorry. So I'm going to continue here. Okay, this is okay because again, this is it. We're itemizing and we're not. For those of you that have done taxes before, this last section on the last part of the return is different. You now have at the top a process basically of where you're going to be at as you move along on the last steps of the return. So here, how would you how would the client like to send their tax return? Of course, we're going to assume a direct deposit for now. Taxpayer email. I believe this is all not required. It's optional, this information. We continue. You notice we're now on the second part. Since we're a VITA site, we do not charge. Just remember that the software is also tailored for businesses who do charge. So we leave this blank. Bank account information. So here it just reminds you a taxpayer may allocate the refund into 3 bank accounts or a paper check or up to 3 savings bonds. Bank account 1. So just remember, if someone wants to split, husband and wife, they have separate accounts. They want half and half, you may. So you would set up bank account 1 and bank account 2 and split the amount, half and half. So I'm gonna set this up. The information, the assignment doesn't give you this, but I just used some information from a previous one. And so I'm just gonna set it up here so that we can go through the process. So checking, I'm calling this Choice Bank. Routing number. And I believe once we get to the live and doing taxes, I believe Mayela has already sent out this information with the local routing numbers for the banks. So the full refund, I'm gonna assume that all goes into one. And the account number, again, I used one from a previous. And on here on the, I just reminded myself of something. Just informing clients that direct deposit is the safest and fastest way to get their refund. And again, just reminding yourselves that if we're dealing with a return that has dependents, it's just gonna take a little longer. And we continue. So now we're in the taxpayer consent. This is, this is new. New in the respect that they seem to be combining both the global and the VITA sites. And so based on the information, as I understand it here, you do not need to provide consent for the VITA TCE partner preparing your tax return this year. Carry forward will assist you only if you visit a different VITA or TCE partner next year. So again, it looks like it's all in one. So we're gonna accept the consent. I'm gonna use the zip code. Since this is a joint return, I'm using the same one for both. Assigning it with today's date. And today's date. And we continue. Okay, this will be for the custom questions. They're at the end of the interview intake sheet. So the same thing with the next one. Custom credits set up by each site. And then we continue. This section here, if the return is being done by the portal, and if you're trying to do things electronically, the top section, here's the information of the bank accounts. And then a volunteer would mark this ready for review. And then after that, of course, it would be the quality reviewer to come in here and review the return and set it up for e-file and do the process. So the volunteer will only mark it ready for review. So again, just remember that you, the volunteer, cannot e-file returns. So you, the volunteer, would only mark the return ready for review, because someone else is going to have to come over and access the return and review it before it goes anywhere. I know that for VITA purposes, I believe we do the bank account does appear on the tax return. But if they went somewhere else, the likelihood that their bank account is on their tax return is probably not there. So again, it's important that we educate clients.